everyone, Alexa Donne here, and today I am going to be talking about mentorship, specifically some of my best tips for being both a great mentee and a great mentor. Mentorship is so important in many fields and areas, and specifically in writing, mentorship can be completely transformative. Typically, mentorship is a free thing. It's one person volunteering to mentor another, to help someone get to the next level, usually professionally. It's not about kind of making your writing better, but making aspects of your craft and your toolkit better so that you can get to the next step professionally. In traditional publishing, typically when you see mentorships, this is to help you get to the step of being agented and getting published. And yes, I happen to run a free mentorship program called Author Mentor Match. Our next round is in February 2020, very, very soon. The submissions are going to be open February 13th to February 16th, and we have mentors for middle grade, young adult fiction, and adult. We're doing adult for the first time. We have select adult mentors for romance, thriller, fantasy, sci-fi, women's fiction, and literary fiction. So I am very intimately familiar with both being a mentee, I was in some mentorship contests, and of course being a mentor. The reason I started Author Mentor Match with my good friend and CP Heather Kaczynski is we had benefited from almost DIY mentorship. As CPs, we helped each other to get where we wanted to go, and we recognized the value in basically paying it forward, in helping other people come up through the ranks and join us. One of my favorite things about mentorship is you are basically taking someone in whom you see enormous potential, whose work is really good, and you're saying, you are my peer. You're not up here yet, but I'm going to help you get there. It's really fulfilling, and it can be a game changer for a lot of people. But I wanted to make this video because mentorship isn't completely cut and dry, specifically when you need mentorship, when you're ready, and how to be a good mentee if you are selected for mentorship. Plus, I do have some tips on being a good mentor, but the focus here is definitely for mentees, as most of you watching are going to be mentees. So the first big question is, how do you know if you're ready for mentorship? At what point do you seek out mentorship? I already kind of hinted at it. Mentors are not editors. So if you need someone to copy edit your work to make your sentences prettier, that's really not what a mentor is for. A mentor is not an editor. It is not a free way to get paid editorial work. You should have a complete manuscript, so you should be done with a novel. You should have already worked on that novel with critique partners, revised it a few times. You have been putting in the work to improve your craft, to create a work that can get an agent. You are used to peer feedback, and you have developed some revision skills. You don't have to be perfect. If you were perfect, you wouldn't need mentorship. But the best mentees, like the mentees who can best be helped by a professional mentor, are those who have basically had their training wheels on, they've biked a little bit, and their mentor is there to help them fly, to take off those training wheels and learn to ride their bike. But if you haven't bought a bike yet, or put training wheels on it, or ever biked, a mentorship's probably not going to be super helpful to you. And especially, mentors are going to be looking for all sorts of different things in a mentee. It's going to vary by mentor, but many mentors, when they are professional authors, so they have already gotten to the next level, they have agents or they have book deals, they have multiple books out, they are working professional writers, they're busy, they don't have a ton of time, and mentorship is about giving back. It is a volunteer effort usually, because mentors typically aren't paid, so they're basically out of the goodness of their heart taking their time to help other people. So they have to best utilize their time, and typically are going to be looking for people who don't need 101 writing tips. Again, they're not your editor. They're looking for people who already are kind of on their way, but they can just kind of help them get to the next level. So you have to have a certain amount of savvy and polish. Again, not perfection, but you have to be kind of there. That said, there's no magic number of times you have to have revised your work. It's really tricky because some people can write a first draft and do one revision and they're in a spot where a mentor could work with them. Other people have to write a book and revise it a few times to shine it into shape where a mentor could benefit them. It varies totally. And if you're on the fence, you're like, should I apply? As long as you have a complete manuscript and you think it's in good shape, it doesn't hurt to apply for a mentorship like author-mentor match. But the next tip / are you ready for mentorship? You have to actually be open to what mentorship means. This might be the most important thing I say to you because it is one of the most critical things in what makes a good mentee someone pleasant to work with versus not. Let me tell you another thing that mentorship is not. Mentorship is not a rubber stamp to query. You should not go in with the expectation this professional person's gonna go, you are a brilliant genius, this book is perfect, I'm gonna refer you to my agent and make your career happen. That's not what mentorship is. It shouldn't be about using someone for their connections. It's not about seeking the validation of you're a perfect writer. There is validation in hearing from a professional that you have potential and they want to work with you. But I've seen some mentees who apply to these things and sometimes get chosen, but you usually see the red flag in the application stage, who don't want to hear any feedback. They don't want to actually do any revision of their story. They want to hear that they're perfect and great. They get very defensive when a mentor says, would you be open to working on this? They go, no, I like it just the way it is. Well, then you're not ready for mentorship. Mentorship involves editing. You have to be open to receiving critical feedback on your work, constructive critical feedback, and actually revising your novel. Some mentors are going to ask for more revision than others, and I'm going to talk about finding the right mentor for you because it does vary. But if you're not open to serious editorial revision, whatever it takes to get your manuscript to that next level, you're not cut out for mentorship or ready for mentorship. I'm also going to warn you, you're probably going to struggle to get an agent or work with an agent or an editor at a professional publisher. The openness and willingness to actually work on your work and improve it is necessary to becoming a professional writer. But you have to be open to mentorship and what mentorship actually means, or you're going to be miserable. But also, those red flags usually do pop out, and you won't be selected at all if you're really closed off to what mentorship means. So how do you know what kind of mentorship you need and what kind of mentor? There are different kinds of mentor programs. So for example, there are contest mentorship programs such as Pitch Wars. I, back in the day, did one called Pitch Madness, for example. It was the time before Pitch Wars, but Pitch Wars is the big one now. Or there are things like Author-Mentor Match, or the We Need Diverse Books mentorship is another good one, where it's open-ended, it's about longer term helping you with professional steps rather than a specific manuscript, which has to be revised in a set period of time and is going to go in a public showcase. Those are two different things, even though intense mentorship is involved in both. You need to know what really is going to work for you as a writer and work for your manuscript. Also, I'm going to give you the same warning that I give about agents, which is anyone who is an author who writes can say, I'm going to mentor someone, and not all mentors and mentorship is created equal. My tip for seeking out mentorship programs and specific mentors to apply to within those programs, you should look at the mentors themselves, at the authors themselves. What do they write? Who is their agent? If they are being published, where are they being published? Read what they say about themselves and their process and whatnot, and make sure you actually vibe with the way that they talk about story, the way that they are kind of envisioning how they want to work with someone. I did mention don't prestige chase because a warning I want to give is it is so transparent when someone is only applying to be mentored by someone because they want a referral to their agent. Mentorship is not an automatic through line to get your foot in the door. It is possible sometimes that working with a specific mentor can get you a referral to an agent, but thinking of your mentorship relationship as a transactional like that, it's not good, and if they sniff it beforehand, you're probably not going to be chosen, and if they sniff it afterwards, it will probably sour your relationship. So it's obviously important to look at mentors who have strong agent representation and or book deals, but it isn't the end all be all. That said, I do feel that if an author has poor agent representation, no agent representation, or has been published places you would literally never want to be published, that you shouldn't have mentorship with that person. Mentors are always passing on their personal experience and thoughts, and if you aren't actually interested in their trajectory, their professional trajectory, that means that their experience isn't actually really relevant to your aspirations. So I do think you should look for fit. It's where they're published, who they're agented by, also genre and category. If you write romance, you want to find someone who's writing and publishing romance, and so on. People's experience and knowledge and ability to best mentor is really determined by their own unique set of experiences and circumstances. So you're kind of looking not for the ideal, just like dream agents, you shouldn't have a dream mentor because you never know who you're going to connect with, but you should have a pool of either programs or specific mentors that you're interested in working with who really vibe with what you're doing and where you want to go. So now I want to get into the stuff of how to be a good mentee when you have been selected as a mentee. So first of all, I think it's important to have realistic expectations. Mentor-mentee relationships definitely vary, and everyone's bringing their own kind of set of expectations to things, and it's a relationship. You know how sometimes you just fire on all cylinders with a person and you're BFFs for life, and sometimes you just get along generally, but you're not going to be BFFs for life. The mentor-mentee relationship can go in a variety of ways. Always go in kind of open and warm, but I think it's kind of dangerous to set the expectation that your mentor is going to become your long time forever best friend in the industry. Sometimes the course of a relationship with a mentor is just, they read my book, they give me really good feedback, I do a revision, they help me with querying, and that's it. Sometimes the relationship is we talk all the time. We're more friends than mentor-mentee. They read my book several times, and when that book doesn't get an agent, they work with me on the next one. It really varies. Sometimes it's a love match, and sometimes it's just a good short-term professional relationship. So I just say that so that you can set your expectations, and I'm gonna go over the things you can do as a mentee in your relationship to hopefully have a better experience. Be very open to what mentorship means. I talked about, are you ready for mentorship? You have to be open to editing. I really mean it. Now, sometimes in these mentorship programs, a mentor will communicate with you before they choose you to see if you're okay with their editorial vision. That's always great because it gives you a little snapshot of what they have in mind, and balls in your court to decide if you're open to that. By the way, if you say you are, actually be open to that. So you're about to get into intense editorial that is not exactly like working with a critique partner or exchanging your manuscript with friends. It is next level. It's going to be far more similar to working with an agent or working with an editor at a publisher than anything else, which means it can be an incredibly emotionally intense experience. This might be the first time you've ever received an in-depth editorial letter. This is a professional reading your entire work and really dissecting both what is working but what isn't working. And if you're in a professional mentorship program and you want to be published, you should want them to tell you what is wrong with your manuscript. That doesn't mean it's going to go down easy. It is a very emotional experience. So my advice generally in this situation, whether it's mentorship, agenting, or with your editor, really keep an open mind, digest that edit letter, have your friends who you go to and freak out a little bit, but be open to what they're telling you. Give it time to sit. Ask your mentor to have a Skype session or a chat session to really talk it out. Always remember that they chose you for a reason. They want to work with you because there's something there. And then don't be afraid to say to your mentor, I see what you're saying here and I don't know how to fix it. Do you have suggestions for me? Or how do I tackle this revision? What are your tips and tricks for doing this kind of revision? Because part of mentorship is this person's giving you their knowledge and their experience, and they can give you those key tips and tools to level up your entire process. So be open to the process. A little bit of stubbornness and truculence is okay. And actually, my next tip kind of goes with this. So this is just good advice generally, by the way, for writers when you're working with critique partners, mentors, agents, or editors. When you are working with someone who's giving you their opinion on your work and you are going to have to do a big revision, you shouldn't ever do every single thing they tell you to. That is actually kind of dangerous. It's as dangerous as sticking your head in the sand and refusing to change anything. You have to learn this sense, and it's part of the process of being a writer. You have to learn which bits of feedback are like really nailing it, are really sound, the core things that you agree with or can learn to agree with that you need to change versus things that are a little bit more subjective. It's like, okay, that's how they feel, but it's the thing I'm not willing to change. You should always have that line of the things that you are standing your ground on versus the things that you are open to changing. It should be a conversation. It should always be a compromise. My rule of thumb when I work with my agent and my editor is 80-20 or 90-10. I'm pretty generous because I've learned to be very open to feedback. I will do 80 to 90% of the edits, but I always leave the room for that 10 to 20% of things that are really important to me that I am not willing to compromise on. And as you become more experienced as a writer, you learn that line. And so as you're working with your mentor, you do get to, there's certain things, you don't have to do everything they tell you to do. And you have to be careful doing everything a mentor tells you to do. No mentor is God, and mentors can ruin books. Agents can ruin books, and editors can ruin books too. So it's this dance of learning what's good and what's less good, and you work together to create a beautiful book. So you have to be open, but you also have to know what's important to you. And this is the whole are you ready for mentorship thing. You are ready for mentorship if you have practiced this skill with critique partners and other people to really understand what is important to you in a book versus what you're open to changing. It should always be a compromise. But my warning here that I have seen is nothing is going to tick off your mentor more than them investing a ton of time in your manuscript. That time in your manuscript is time that they're not writing their own books, that they're not selling their own work, that they're not making their own money and investing in their own career. They are giving you that valuable time. And nothing is more annoying than when they do that and you basically don't listen to anything they say, refuse to do the majority of what they're telling you or address core issues, and you do a kind of bare bones basic revision. You don't really get to the heart of the issue, and then sometimes they read it again and give you the same feedback and you say no to them again. Sometimes you query and it doesn't go the way you want because the thing that your mentor told you was broken is still broken, and then you blame it on your mentor. I have seen this before. Don't be that person. Don't be that person. Now, everything about mentorship is a learning curve. You do not have to be perfect the first time out, but be a little generous with your mentor and forgiving if you are stubborn for a time and then you realize, oh no, my mentor was right. But if you remain stubborn and you're awful to work with, that's going to be a bad mentor-mentee relationship. So don't be that person. Another thing you shouldn't do, a warning I want to give you. So when you get into professional mentorship, you have to be very careful about the role that your critique partners play in your manuscript from that point forward. Great CPs are worth their weight in gold. We love them. But CPs can also be an anchor around your ankle. CPs really vary. The thing is that you have to remind yourself, if your CPs were the most brilliant people on the earth and better than an editor and knew exactly what it took to get you to the next level, you would not need a mentor. You would have already gotten an agent if your CPs were perfect. So something I have seen that I warn against is the worst thing you could do is say to your mentor, you know, you're saying I need to fix that, but all my CPs disagree with you. That is really annoying. Well, are your CPs published? Because if they're not, sit down. That's the thing. You have to respect the reason you're in a mentorship. And you sought out this person with a professional opinion for a reason, so maybe listen? So just don't be that person. Because again, your mentor is giving their valuable time to help you. So my next thing is respect their time. Great mentees respect the time of their mentors. Now, there should always be open communication, and mentors can be flakes. But there's a difference between a mentor who is not honoring their end of the commitment and a mentor who is a busy working professional who has to kind of rearrange things and twist things in terms of a schedule so that they can both serve you in the way that they want to serve you, but also serve themselves. And so it's important for you as a mentee to have an understanding of your professional mentor's situation and times. So if you have a mentor who maybe can't get you an edit letter right away or can't review your query right away because they have professional obligations like a deadline, you need to be a little bit understanding. Part of the price of having a legit professional is that they have professional obligations. Less successful people indeed will have more time to help you on call, on your schedule. But when you're working with a professional, really you're on their schedule. Where I've seen this really come up and cause problems, usually in the initial part of the relationship, a mentor shouldn't sign up for a mentorship program unless they have that pocket of time available to be available to you in that first part of the relationship. But where I've seen things get really sticky, and I always encourage mentees to just be a little bit understanding, everyone has different timelines and schedules for how long it takes them to work on something, how long it takes them to read something, etc. And so, for example, let's say it takes you 4 months to do your revision. That's fine. That's the time you need for your revision. But maybe in that time when you've been revising, your mentor got a new book deal or sold on proposal or has a really tough deadline or has a book coming out. I've definitely seen this happen. When those things happen and they have very serious obligations and deadlines, you do look like a bit of a brat when you complain that it took them 2 whole weeks to get back to you the week of their book launch. So my tip is just be very thoughtful about your mentor's time and the way that schedules kind of work out. But the next thing I want to talk about is when a mentor isn't good and you need to stand up for your rights. So I run a mentorship program. So I straddle that line between I care about my mentors, but I really care about my mentees too. And sometimes mentors are not perfect and it's about protecting the mentee. There are times when you need to stand up for yourself, where you are not getting the end of the bargain that you were promised in a mentorship. So what is that line? It's all about timeliness and communication. Look at what the mentorship program that you signed up is offering. Is there a timeline specified? Have you heard from your mentor in a reasonable amount of time? Are they checking in with you? If they're communicating to you a delay and you understand why there is the delay, usually that's not a reason to say something unless that delay is really, really egregious. If your mentor ghosts you, yes, this happens sometimes. This isn't to freak any of you out, but I'm here to let you know that, for example, when these things happen, when a mentor isn't responsive, doesn't do things in a timely manner, kind of disappears, especially if it's between like you've done your revision and now you want to query, I want mentees to come to me when those things happen. So whatever the mentorship program that you're in is, I encourage you to utilize the program director, whoever is in charge of the logistics of the program. They are there to advocate for you just as much as they are there to advocate for the mentors. They are there to facilitate these relationships, or at least certainly that is how I view my role. And they can't solve a problem if they don't know that there is a problem. I know it feels terrible to tattle on your mentor, but genuinely, I appreciate it so much when a mentee comes to me, because if I know there's a problem, I can do something about it. Sometimes all it takes is a nudge with the mentor. Other times, it's getting you a new mentor. Yes, that is something that I do in author mentor match. I like to make sure that my mentees are taken care of and get the experience that we promise. It does vary. Sometimes it's the mentee having unrealistic expectations. Sometimes it's the mentor behaving badly. But I encourage you to come to the program director because we're here to help. Mentors aren't perfect, they're human, and if we don't know something is going wrong, then we can't help you fix it. To that end, it is okay to be disappointed by a mentorship experience. I say look on the bright side. There's always something you're gonna get out of it as long as they did something for you. Usually they do. And I remind you again that, yeah, we always want kind of that BFF experience. It doesn't always work out, but you still got a professional to help you with your manuscript, and usually that is going to be a net positive. And that's definitely something I want to leave you with. Mentorship doesn't have to be forever, and if it isn't forever, it doesn't mean that you have failed as a mentee or that they have failed you as a mentor. A really substantive 6-month, 1 year, year and a half, 2-year relationship is better than no relationship. I'd say it's actually pretty rare for a mentorship to go much longer than that. So be happy for the time that you have. So I caution you against having the expectation that this mentorship is going to be this life-changing forever relationship. And sometimes this mentorship is going to end because you have gotten everything you want out of the relationship, and that is okay too. My big tip here is communication. Something I want to warn against that I have seen, and this plays into don't use your mentor as a stepping stone. I kind of hinted at that it shouldn't just be transactional about what they can do for you with their agent, etc. But something I have also seen that has led to hurt feelings, so this is my advice to you to be a good mentee in terms of how you can end a relationship nicely. One thing I want to strongly caution you against, do not use a mentor or mentorship program to polish up one manuscript just so that you can get where you want to get in a different mentorship program. I have seen this happen more than once, and I have to tell you, it always hurts the mentor's feelings. They feel like they've been used, often because the mentee wasn't upfront with them, though you can also be upfront with them and they're still going to be hurt. And you kind of have to understand why. You did kind of use them as free editorial help so that you could get a better mentor or into a better contest or what have you. Just be careful and definitely be above board when it comes to that kind of situation. Now, there are cases where you work with your mentor for over a year and you query and it just isn't going well in queries, and then there's another opportunity that comes along and your mentor will give you their blessing to take that opportunity. They might even suggest it to you. As long as there's good faith and communication, you're good. But please do not use your mentors. Don't be sneaky, because that is a way to permanently ruin a professional relationship. And ultimately, what I want to remind you is your mentor is your peer. Or they will be, or you want them to be. The whole idea is you want to be a part of the industry and they are offering to help you get there. So you should think of them as your peer, and you should know that publishing is a very, very small industry. So you shouldn't use someone and be seen to stab them in the back, because that reputation can follow you. Don't be that ruthless mentee who's just stepping over people to get to your destination. It's a bad look, and that reputation will follow you. So those, I think, are most of the things I want you guys as mentees to know. I've probably forgotten something, but these are all of my thoughts about things to be prepared for and look for, and how to be a good mentee and hopefully have a really good experience. And I'd like to end this far too long video with some tips for potential mentors, because mentoring has a lot of nuances as well. And some of these tips and advice are actually the flip of what I have just told potential mentees. My first tip, if you are interested in mentoring, number one, make sure you have the time commitment. Really carefully consider the timeline of the mentorship program that you are signing up for. I know we all have best intentions and we think, well, I have a book due that month, or I have a book coming out that month, but I'm sure I can do it. In my experience, over and over and over again, most of the time you can't. Most of the situations I've seen where a mentor is a bit flaky and doesn't quite provide the experience that the mentee signed up for, and there's some hurt feelings, it's almost always when a mentor unintentionally, without malice, took on more than they could realistically handle in the timeline. They underestimated what a commitment mentorship would be. So please, I beg of you, be very, very thoughtful about your schedule before signing up. Now, that said, there are situations where you can't control the timing. If a mentee takes 6 months longer on a revision than you ever anticipated, and when they come back to you for more help, you are slammed with something, that is not your fault. That is something that was out of your control. And in that situation, I recommend effective communication with your mentee to set expectations. So that's actually my next big tip for being a mentor. Always have effective communications and set expectations. Let them know what your schedule is and the things that you have coming up and what you can realistically offer them. Hopefully in the course of the mentorship program before applications, you're able to also set expectations. This is the reason Author Mentor Match has a section of the mentor profile that says what your mentorship style is. Because you don't want a mentee to come in expecting you to read their book 4 times, do line edits, all of that, put all of that work in, when that's just not your style. You will do one big edit letter and then you will help them query. So you just have to make sure that they have the right expectations. If they want to Skype with you, but you're not into Skyping, hopefully you all know that ahead of time so that no one is disappointed. My next tip for mentors, again with kind of the timing piece and expectations, when you sign up and then you are evaluating potential mentees, be really, really brutal with yourself and honest with yourself about how much work you can take on. Some books need more work, and they do involve a total rewrite. They're going to involve multiple reads on a manuscript because that is what the manuscript and the mentee need from you as a mentor. If you don't have the bandwidth to do that, please don't select that mentee, because ultimately they're going to feel let down. They'll do some massive rewrite based on your notes, and then you're gone. You're not available to read their manuscript again. On the other hand, if you are someone who really, really wants to do that deep dig in work, that can help you know, I want to select a mentee who is brimming with potential but does need to do more work. So just know what you realistically can handle and then select the right mentee and book based on your own bandwidth and availability. My next tip for mentors is to very seriously look for red flags in a mentee application. And if you have a bad feeling, don't ignore your gut. Really look on applications for signs that a person isn't open to editing. There are even often signs that they have submitted a book that isn't complete. That's always a fun one. You should look for signs that someone isn't well read in their genre. That's not always a deal breaker because part of your role as a mentor could be to assign them more reading. But I genuinely encourage you to look for red flags that someone might be difficult to work with more than you personally can handle. If your program allows it, don't be afraid to ask them questions. If you have a big revision in mind, it's actually often in the mentee's best interest for you to run those questions by them. If you're suggesting a major rewrite, the last thing you want is to select them and just have it so happen that that one thing you want them to rewrite is their deal breaker. Every mentee is allowed a deal breaker, so you want to make sure that your visions match. My next tip for mentors is to use your resources and don't be afraid to ask for help. Usually there is a program that you're involved in, and whoever is in charge of the program is there to help you if you encounter any issues. They're there to help you pick a good mentee. They could give you their opinion. They're there to help you if your mentee is really pushing back against edits. They're there to help you if your mentee is ready to query and you don't know exactly how to help them. They're there as a second set of eyes, as well as there to help you with troubleshooting any potential issues. Just like with mentees, I love it when my mentors come to me and actually tell me what's going on. Because again, if I don't know that there's a problem, I can't help you. So don't be afraid to essentially refer up if something is going on. My next tip that I almost forgot, this is about mentee selection. Don't be that dick who aggressively fights for mentees and pisses off their fellow mentors. You know how I warn mentees that these are professional relationships and these are your peers? Fellow mentors are literally definitely your peers because you're all at the same level of publishing, hopefully. And so don't do anything to piss them off. Don't go behind their back. Don't be too aggressive in your tactics. You hear war stories about intense fights among mentors for specific mentees. I always encourage civil communication and compromise. Don't earn an enemy. My next tip in selecting a mentee, this is a personal tip. Always request or read a synopsis. I know you're spoiling yourself for the book, but either read the entire book before you select someone or read that synopsis to make sure you have a pretty clear idea of where the manuscript is going. A huge mistake I see mentors make is choosing a mentee to work with based solely on premise and a partial. You definitely have to read past the first 10 pages and I strongly encourage you to read past the partial. You need to have an accurate and full picture of the state of the manuscript, because the last thing you want is to pick something and then discover it completely falls apart in the second half and you don't know how to fix it. That is not going to serve you or your mentee, or you know how to fix it, but it's going to involve so much of your time that you become overwhelmed. So seriously, it's in your best interest when it comes to selecting your mentee to go in knowing as much as possible. If you can, read the entire manuscript before choosing them. And the good thing is that if you do read the entire manuscript before you choose them, you can write your edit letter sooner rather than later. That's the other thing. I mentioned the time commitment. I know sometimes it isn't possible, but the less time that goes between choosing your mentee and giving them your first round of editorial feedback, the better. It's always going to put your mentee-mentor relationship on the best footing. If you start off that relationship with real feedback, something to work on so they feel like they are moving forward. My next tip for mentors is just what I said to mentees, which is to keep an open mind. Of course, you're there to have editorial ideas and to steer your mentee in the right direction. But humans are human, and ultimately it's their book, not yours. The best you can do is offer your thoughts, maybe some solutions, but your mentee ultimately has to find their own path. Please don't be insulted if they reject some of your feedback, noting that there is a difference between picking and choosing what they're going to do and rejecting you out of hand. If you do have a particularly stubborn mentee, again, that can be something that you refer up to your program director because maybe there's some solutions there. But just deep breaths. You're there to guide, not to direct. I'm sure I'm forgetting something for the mentor tips, but those are some of my best tips for being a mentor in a mentorship program, in addition to those thoughts for mentees. I hope this was helpful. Very long, I know. I have a lot of thoughts about mentorship. Let me know down below in the comments. Have you been a mentee? Have you been a mentor? Do you have questions about either side? And give this video a thumbs up if you like it, and I will make more Thinky Thoughts videos about publishing and writing topics. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and happy writing.